Well, this is it. The thrilling conclusion of this roller coaster ride. This is what it was all about. $180 million. 8 episodes. 35 minutes of actual content. This episode has all the hallmarks that have become the norm for this show. Nonsensical logic, inconsistent internal rules, and idiotic character decisions. At this point, I feel like I'm saying the same things about this absolutely ridiculous show. I'm not sure why it exists, what it's trying to say, or what those who made it were even trying to accomplish. Well, no reason to belay the point. Let's see if we can get through this. The episode picks up where episode 6 left off. Osha is wearing Chimaera's helmet, and Sol and May are en route somewhere. Osha receives a forced vision of where May is going to, as well as an image of her killing Sol. Chimaera agrees to go with her to get May, who has been taken back to Bryndock by Sol. Before they leave, Chimaera offers to train Osha, but she refuses. As they leave the planet, Darth Plagueis watches from the shadows. Is he part of Chimaera's Sith line? What is he doing there? I have some ideas, and it's really obnoxious, but I'll get to that near the end. On Sol's ship, he has her restrained on some kind of examination table, and is explaining his intention. He wants to go back to Bryndock so that he can show the Jedi the truth about Osha and May, who he says are not twins, not even sisters. Any further explanation is predictably interrupted by May's escape. As it turns out, Sol restrained her to the table but neglected to remove her equipment belt, which was full of several different tools to aid her escape. May takes one of the ship's smaller transports and flees. Sol detaches a section of the ship and pursues her. May enters the ring of a nearby planet, a feat that should have destroyed her ship nearly instantly, and Sol follows her. Just as he is about to catch up to her and engage his tractor beam, the little beaver creature sabotages his ship. For some reason. The result sees both he and May crashing on Bryndock. We shift to Coruscant. Venestra and Mog have returned to the planet, once again making a trip that should have taken at least a week in no time at all. Mog enters Venestra's office and tells her that an anti-Jedi senator has arrived, and Mog showed him into a different section of the temple. Venestra admonishes him, which he accepts with the requisite amount of shame and submission. She and the senator verbally spar about the dangers of the Jedi and their insistence on their ability to keep their emotions in check, and he leaves. Mog arrives and informs her that Sol's ship transponder has been turned back on and they know where he is. Bryndock. Venestra orders him to ready a ship and gather as many Jedi as he can without drawing notice. Chimaera and Osha arrive on Bryndock, where Osha hotwires the compound door to activate generators that exploded 16 years ago. Osha runs to find May, while Chimaera vanishes and goes in search of Sol. He finds him, and the two begin to fight. Osha finds May. They bicker for a few moments before descending into a fight themselves. The show cuts back and forth between the two fights, trying to make some thematic comparison between the two that utterly fails because we know very little about any of these characters. What does May want? What about Osha? Chimaera? Sol? We spent 8 episodes of this show with these characters, and I know next to nothing about the motivations, desires, or plans. What is this show about? The lightsaber choreography is consistent with the rest of the show. Fast and flashy to appear complex and impressive, but ultimately not very good. I'm sure it will impress many of the clapping seals who record videos of themselves overreacting in embarrassing and shameful ways and then post them to the internet for the world to see. The fight choreography between Osha and May is one of the worst fight scenes put to film, with Amanda Stanberg stumbling over herself in stilted, flat-footed moves. May escapes Osha, and Sol gains the upper hand, holding Chimaera at the tip of his lightsaber. May appears out of nowhere and rips the lightsaber out of Sol's hand, sending it flying across the yard. May confronts Sol about his crime on Bryndock, a crime that I can't for the life of me identify. After talking back and forth, we ascertain that Sol's great crime was killing Anastasia, the woman that forcibly invaded the mind of a young man, apparently manipulated the creation of life, and transformed into a scary Nazgul lost monster with absolutely no warning. This is the great travesty that, if revealed, could threaten the future of the Jedi. In a show that is attempting to depict a gray world where the Jedi make questionable decisions and abuse their power, the writers decided to settle on a scenario where the Jedi intervene to save children from an evil lesbian witch cult. As I've said before, Leslye Headland is definitely saying something in this show, but it's not what she thinks she's saying. Sol finally explains the crux of the show. Osha and May are not twins. They are the same person, somehow created by the Coven as one person, and then split into 2 separate beings. He explains that only someone very powerful in the Force could create a life out of nothing. This demonstrates the showrunner's ignorance of the Force and the Vergent spoken of in The Phantom Menace. Headland and company seem to know a lot of the Star Wars lingo and enough surface-level information to impress casual Star Wars fans with their extensive knowledge, but this show has demonstrated time and time again that they don't actually understand the property. They know the words, but not what they mean. Anakin's conception had its start decades prior in the Force manipulation begun by Darth Tenebrous, master to Darth Plagueis. Tenebrous, like many Sith before him, sought to bypass the rule of two and live on forever. In this case, by preserving his essence in specially created midi-chlorians that would infect his apprentice upon his death. The manipulation of the Force would reach its apex under Plagueis and Sidious when the two attempted to create a being of pure darkness, pouring their evil malice and will into the attempt. Their efforts failed, but it did elicit a countermeasure by the Force, the creation of Anakin Skywalker. This was an act of the Force to balance out the darkness being wrought by Plagueis and Sidious, the creation of the Chosen One who would eventually bring balance to the Force. But never mind, the same thing had already been done 100 years prior by some lesbian space witches. No big deal. May forces Sol to admit his crime in the sight of Osha, who now holds Sol's lightsaber. She confronts Sol over his lies, and Sol claims that he did what he thought was best. She begins force-choking him. Despite the fact that she is a Jedi dropout, and he is an experienced master, and despite the fact that the Jedi have force techniques to combat against things just like this, she is able to kill him. As she does so, her anger grows so great that she is able to turn Sol's blue lightsaber crystal into a red lightsaber crystal. I understand this is Disney's new canon for Sith lightsabers, a process called bleeding that turns lightsaber crystals red, but it's a stupid, nonsensical change, and it looks ridiculous on screen. Vernestra's ship arrives. Kymer tells Osha and May to run while he hides. Vernestra exits her ship and senses Kymer, a familiar presence to her, before he puts his helmet back on. We learn that Kymer was once her apprentice before he fell to the dark side. Mog discovers the hunting beaver. May leads Osha out of the compound, taking the same path she took as a child. Vernestra enters the compound and discovers Sol's body. She tells the Jedi team to set up a 5-click perimeter and orders Mog to use the beaver to find the twins. We cut to Osha and May running through the jungle, with the entire Jedi team in pursuit, meaning that no perimeter was ever set up. Kymer catches up to the twins, and Osha volunteers to go with him in exchange for him releasing May. I don't know why either one of them had to go with Kymer. It seems they could both decide not to go, but they're trying to make Osha's dumb decision look noble. Remember, Disney Star Wars Cardinal Rule number 3. In order to keep the Jedi off their trail, Kymer uses the Force to wipe May's memory clean all the way back to being lost in the compound 16 years prior. She's found by the Jedi and taken back to Coruscant. Vernestra speaks with May and learns that she has no memory of the previous 16 years. Vernestra shows her pity and treats her like a victim. I'm not sure what the show is saying is happening here. Are they saying that the Jedi believe Osha was the one killing the Jedi from the beginning, and May was just a victim in the whole thing? Or are the Jedi letting her off the hook because she doesn't remember anything that she's done? No idea, because the show doesn't tell us. All they do is demonstrate that she has no memory and no longer is treated like a prisoner. Vernestra goes before a Senate committee, admitting to the crimes the rogue Jedi committed on Bryndock and blaming all the Jedi deaths on Sol, claiming that the guilt finally overtook him and he snapped. This, she says, is the result of one flawed man. Could they have been more on the nose with that line? This right here is the entire contempt for Star Wars and Star Wars fans boiled down to a concentrated line of dialogue. From there, she goes to speak with Yoda. And that's it. That's the show. And what was accomplished. The Jedi have been shown to be bad guys, though by all rational measures they did nothing wrong. Osha and May swapped places. 4 Jedi were killed. That's pretty much it. I cannot express just how useless the story was. It doesn't provide greater context to the larger Star Wars world. It doesn't make any kind of pertinent commentary on the real world. And it is only detrimental to the previously established canon. We've already discussed the issues with Coyote-Mundai, but about that Plagueis cameo. Why was Plagueis there? Was he interested in the twins? How long has he been following the story of the twins? While no sure information is provided, big surprise there, I think we are intended to infer that Plagueis has been following the twins for a long time. Further, I believe we were expected to assume that it was the actions of Anastasia that gave Plagueis the inspiration to try his own experiments, which I believe Headland and company believe to be the direct cause of Anakin's creation, rather than it being a result of the Force. So, Leslye is retroactively claiming credit for Anakin's creation. The final insult has been perpetrated. This show is one of the worst pieces of work ever put to screen. Every generally accepted rule of cinema was broken at least once in this show, resulting in the confusing, nonsensical, canon-breaking, contradictory mush that was shoveled onto our screens for the last month and a half. This is peak Disney Star Wars, meaning it's the bottom of the trough for Star Wars or anything representing decent visual media. The most discouraging thing about this show is that it is the quintessential Star Wars property. This is what Disney wants Star Wars to be. This is the goal. This is the show their new audience wants. It makes you wonder if we'll ever get anything good from this franchise ever again. I love Star Wars. I love the complex and interesting characters that have been a part of this franchise for decades. It saddens me to see the damage done to this property in just a short period of time. Despite Disney's utter contempt for people like me, I do think it's important that the true Star Wars fans continue to view and criticize this stuff. Someone has to represent Star Wars. Someone has to remember what it was and remind people of what it could still be. If we give up, the only voices will be those of the clapping seals, sending the constant message that this is what is wanted. We have to continue to fight. We have to help Star Wars. We're its only hope. Thank you for watching.